Good morning, everyone. Thanks for your time. I know that's the most valuable commodity, so I really appreciate the attention you're going to give me for the next 15 minutes. So to start out with, I'll just give a brief story on Trilok and how we came about building this company. So my co-founder Sunil and I, we studied together in Carnegie Mellon, and we've been together since '99. After college, both of us moved to the Dreamland, California, and we were in Silicon Valley, and we were working for our competitors. So I was working for Synopsys, and he was working for Magma, and we were basically at the heart of software engineering and hardware. So that was really interesting. And then after a couple of years, Sunil got the entrepreneurship bug, and he jumped continents, and he went to Glasgow, and he started a company called Keypoint Technologies. And this was 2006, and it was still we had the Nokia phones with the keypads and so on, and typing on phones was really hard. So he started this company called Keypoint Technologies, which basically made predictive texting. So we were doing AI on phones with 2 MB RAM. So that was quite interesting, and we faced a lot of challenges. And then during that time, he basically called me up and said, why don't you join me? And then like 9-hour phone call later, I went from sunny California to dreary Glasgow, and the weather was horrible, but the work was really exciting, and some of the challenges that we faced there was just amazing. And then we really made awesome software. And so moving on, then we basically built that company out, and it's been used by the likes of LG, Samsung, and so on to power the predictive texting system across the board. So then when we started working, we usually we started seeing lots of messages and lots of people calling us all the time, and like the telemarketer calls you get all the time, right? So, and we were really thinking that we are working, and we're constantly being interrupted throughout the day. Why is this happening? Why aren't there solutions out there which help marketers to basically figure out which customer to talk to at the right time, right? So from that perspective, that's when we basically started thinking about, is there a better way? Can we learn from our customers, and can we learn from data on how to basically target the right customer at the right time? Can we go to the next slide? Okay. So from there, I'll give you a specific story, right? So it was a summer of 2013 or 14, and I wanted to get rid of my old AC and buy a new AC. So I went to the local electronics store, and I said, okay, let me get me a new AC. And there was an interesting deal going on there, and they had this 12 months 0% financing, and being a Guju, I said, wow, that's an awesome deal, I'll take it. And so from product perspective, the financing guy was there at the right time, and he gave the customer a good product. However, what happened was afterwards, every single day I kept getting hammered by the financing company to, they were trying to sell me an AC again. I was like, I just bought an AC. You're trying to sell me an AC again? Like, take a loan for an AC, or take a loan for buying a phone. I was like, I don't need it, so you can keep that loan. And then 5 days later, again, I get another call and saying, do you want a personal loan? I'm like, no, I don't need a personal loan. So, this went on for quite a while, and I kept blocking all the numbers, right? But the point, at that point, my co-founder Sunil and I, we realized was there's a huge data problem, and the data problem is at multiple levels. So I am basically going and telling the customer rep that I don't want this. And that information is not being fed back into the system because immediately the next day I get the call selling me the same product. And at the same time, they already have all my details and they already know that I purchased an AC and they're trying to sell me an AC again. So, those things basically, they basically led us to believe that, there must be a better way. And, there must be, and this barrage has to stop, right? So, that's what we created Trilok for. So we wanted to stop this barrage of irrelevant messages, if you say. So, because, see, the thing is, what happens is, like, this is 2018, right? And customers are not going to take this quietly. They're not going to sit and listen to messages, and they have the power to block it off. Because, like I did, if I don't want to receive a telemarketer call, I'm just going to block it. I'm going to install Truecaller, or Google is doing this on their own now. Like, if it's a spam caller, it's going to tell you it's a spam caller. So this is 2018, so, the customer is empowered, and he's going to block all these messages. So there has to be, it has to be a very measured approach where you go and, rather than telling your customer that, okay, here's, please take this product, it has to be like, how do you sell your product? How do you find the right value proposition for your product, right? And then how do you communicate that? Because when you tell customers something that's interesting and useful, they actually notice it, right? For example, let's say you go and tell your customer, this is how you use my product, and this is the feature that will benefit you. Then the customer is ready to receive that message because you're telling him, you're actually imbibing your product and you're embedding your product into his daily life. So when that happens, the messages that you send, the customer is now finding it useful. And because it's helping him get a job done, he wants to receive your message. And so, rather than blocking you off, he's actually listening to you. So, from that perspective, you can think that the holy grail of marketing is basically context and mindfulness, right? You understand what the context of the customer is in, and you're mindful of his time and attention, because time today is the most important aspect that, and we don't have free time, right? Like the earlier panel was saying, that you cannot force customers to give up their time easily, right? So, and even the industry research shows that if you are there when the customer needs you, and then when you step back when he doesn't need you, and you don't encroach on his personal time, they'll become loyal users, right? And at the end of the day, we want customers to be loyal to us. So from that perspective, right, what this got us thinking was, okay, what do we do, right? What do we do? How do you get customers to be loyal users, and how do you get them to consistently engage with you? And that's when we realized that there's a huge treasure trove of data, which is your existing power users, right? So we started learning and how those users are becoming habitual users, right? How are they becoming power users? What is their journey? So if you follow their journey, is when you will learn how they are forming the habits, right? Because habits are really hard to create. They take a long time to create. However, once you create the habit, they're also hard to break, right? We all love coffee, and you keep drinking coffee all the time, but because you've gotten habituated to that. And if once you don't get it, then you look for it, right? So from that perspective, if you get users habituated to your product, you don't have to prompt them anymore, right? You don't have to goad them into using your product. They will use your product nonetheless. So the beauty that of habits that really attracted us was like, it is unconscious. It's not going to, like, you don't have to do anything, right? Once the habit is set up, the user is going to engage with the product. So now, and the other best part is like, it's a long run thing, right? You don't have to worry, or you don't have to give these one-time offers or gimmicks, like, if you do a recharge, here is 100 rupees, or if you do a recharge 5 times, I'll give you 300 rupees. So you don't have to do those gimmicks. Once he's used to doing it, once he's habituated to doing that action, he will do it nonetheless without any incentives, because he actually finds that product useful. It is actually adding value to his life. So now that is, so habits are basically like it. What really attracted Sunil and I was basically this whole concept of how are people building habits over time, and what are they doing, and how do you learn from people themselves? Because the problem with habits is like, different people build habits with different speeds, right? There might be some users who are really technologically advanced and they'll get used to the product very quickly, and some could be laggards, and they basically they take time to build habits. So from that perspective, what got us really interested is like, it's a really deep data mining problem, right? And there is so much you can go to the depths of it. So what we started doing was we started sowing the seeds for habitual AI, right? It's like the world's first engine which basically actually learns from existing users how they are building habits and then replicates that across the board. And what we do is like we basically encode that learning and transfer that learning to the rest of the population who's not habitual yet, who is not using the product on a day-to-day basis. I'll just go into a little bit about how we built it. So we start out with large amounts of data, right, about the customer over 12 to 18 months. And then we really dig in and we basically figure out, we follow users over time, how are they actually going and building these habits, right? How are they using the product? What features of the product are they using? How long are they using them? And then what is their habit building journey, right? And so we basically take large amounts of data of large number of customers. And from there, we basically start out by looking at who are these customers who are basically jumping from non-habitual usage to a habitual bucket where they have gone from being no voices to power users. So, and to do all of this, right, we are not, we usually don't have the luxury to use advanced, like deep learning techniques, simply because there is no hardware to run all of this, right? Because if you're a Google or a Facebook, you'll have like a 1 million node cluster in no time, and you'll have infinite RAM, and you can run your LSTMs or your RNNs, but when you have a 10 node cluster, all of those things sort of are really hard to run at scale. So for this, we had to like purpose build an end-to-end system which basically goes from like it processes the data really efficiently, and it uses very simple algorithms like your like decision trees and random forest to basically come up with the solution, to come up with the recommendations of which feature and what is the journey, and encoding those learnings and be able to give customized and personalized recommendations. But all of this, like like the earlier panel talked, like what is really important is a seamless integration with the organization, right? When you go and deploy a product, it's not just the data science team that you're working with. You're working with your marketing team, you're working with your campaign team, you're working with the product team. So you're working with a wide variety of people within an organization. And not all of them share your enthusiasm for data and metrics and so on, you know. They have their targets to meet, and they have their, and they come from a very different background. So that basically forces you to basically take a very different perspective and so that, you know, you have to make sure that you convince them and you educate them about how this stuff works. So, you know, to help out with some of that, you know, what we did was, in our platform, we included specific screens for specific teams, right? So that, you know, if you have your data and IT teams, you know, they have like they have a dedicated app for them, and then for the product teams who want to understand how customers are behaving, we created a separate sort of like a mini app for them. So the idea being that, you know, if you to really succeed as a product, you need to really succeed as like a data product, you need to have you need to take a wide variety of requirements, and you have to take care of all the different teams in your organization. And see, and because of this is, you know, we got really good results across the board, because we got support from all the teams across the board. We are working with HDFC Bank, and they have seen across the board like increase in digital banking transactions, increase in monthly balance, and so they have seen really good results. And I think primarily one of the reasons is because our focus on not just one team, but on focusing on the entire organization and getting everybody to work together. And I think you know, that is key, because you have your algorithms, but at the same time you are dealing with people at the end of the day. You have to get the people to buy into your product and buy into your into your science, right? When a lot of times it's that is the main challenge. And like Paresh was also saying earlier, it is it's really like a team effort, and you have to convince business that this is actually worthwhile. So I'll just briefly go into, like, you know, some of the key takeaways of what we learned building habitual AI. So one of the key takeaways was, like, you know, simplicity wins. You know, we tried out deep learning and all of that. A lot of times, like deep learning, it's really hard to get the representation right from a data perspective, because it is very sensitive, and at the same time you need tremendous amounts of hardware and processing capacity to actually for those algorithms to work at scale. And I think from a future perspective, I'm sure that, you know, once organizations really start seeing results and they start investing large amounts of money into the data science teams and into the infrastructure that's required to support LSTMs and deep learning based systems. But till then, I think even logistic regression or decision trees has enough juice in it to basically take us to the next level. It's all about figuring out feature engineering, at least from my perspective. The other like really interesting thing that I noticed over the past 10 years is basically, like, you know, if you have just a data science team and there is no software engineering, you cannot really build robust systems. Or if you just have a software engineering team with very little data science in them, then still it doesn't work. You need a team which has a mix of both data science and software engineering. If they're not talking and if they are siloed, you're not going to get models, or you're not going to get systems which actually deliver results consistently, reliably, and with good performance. So, you know, that's not going to happen, you know. So I think that's a key learning from this perspective, that, you know, we need to get the software engineers trained in data science and the data scientists trained in at least basics of software engineering. And we saw really good results with our product, you know, after we did that. And this is another thing that we really we learned from experience, especially from our days in the predictive keyboard space, is like, when you don't have a good recommendation, it is better not to give any recommendation at all, rather than giving a mediocre recommendation, because then you're just going to piss off the customer, right? So from that perspective, I think that we as data scientists, we should make sure that we keep our quality bars really high, and regardless of what anybody wants, we should say that, okay, I don't have a recommendation if you're not really confident of that. And so, right, so and finally, like, to make a positive impact, we need to have, and we need to develop a systemic view, right? We cannot work in silos, and we cannot work in a situation where we are the only people in the room, right? So now we need to get marketing and campaign teams and business teams and product teams all working together, and that's when we can have a really successful deployment of a product, of a machine learning based product. And so to just sum it all, like, over the past few years, what we have, what we really believe is that you don't want to interrupt your customer too often, right? We want to basically make sure that the marketing that you do is sort of invisible. It's sort of completely behind the scenes. Like the earlier panel was saying, that you want to basically make sure that the entire machine learning is actually invisible, and the marketing is invisible, and then you're slightly nudging the customer towards basically engaging with your product. You're doing this very subtly so that you don't interrupt his day, and you're giving him messages which are basically actually useful and interesting, so that at the end of the day he wants to receive your message, right?
Nice.
So from that perspective, I think habits are the next best thing.